Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump has just taken a brand new hardline stance against immigration from the third world. However, some of the rhinos, the Republicans in name only inside of the Republican Party, aren't so happy about it. In fact, one such rhino, Senator Lindsey Graham, actually advocated on behalf of, alongside all of the Democrats, relocating all of these Afghani migrants into the country in 2021, one of which just carried out a jihadist terror attack in the streets of Washington, D.C. And if you don't believe me, and frankly, honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because the prospect of relocating tens of thousands of Afghani immigrants into the streets of the USA is just absolutely insane. Well, take a listen to what Lindsey Graham had to say for himself in 2021.
We're going to get this done. This is the right thing to do. There's no other ending that is acceptable to me. The people who were there with us in the fight that are here in America need to stay. This will be their new home. So we have a moral obligation to these people. They will make great citizens over time.
So, folks, that is what Senator Lindsey Graham was saying about all of Joe Biden's Afghani immigrants in 2021. They'll make great citizens over time. Yeah, well, everyone with half a brain knew that that was never going to happen, and now, regrettably, as of 4 days ago, we all have the proof that they will not, in fact, become good citizens over time. In fact, they'll end up carrying out jihadist terror attacks in our nation's capital. And so it's because of this absolute level of incompetence from Senator Lindsey Graham that General Flynn just had this to say. Senator Graham, you are a worthless human and no longer deserve to serve in the U.S. Senate. Senate Leader Thune and President Trump, you should immediately pull your endorsements of this warmongering scumbag. And you know what? General Flynn is absolutely right about that. It's time to put America first, and what that means is that we don't import tens of thousands of immigrants from Afghanistan like Lindsey Graham wanted us to do. But now, speaking about people with half a brain, take a listen to what someone with a fully functioning brain, President Trump, had to say about all of this back in 2021.
And nobody knows who the hell they are, Cheryl. These aren't the interpreters that we taught. These were people that rushed into the planes, and they were so interested in trying to make it sound like, oh, they're doing a good job. These people, many of these people, are going to be terrorists, okay? They're going to be terrorists. They were very powerful. They were very energetic in getting onto the aircraft.
They say they're vetting them very carefully with biometrics and documentation.
They're not doing that, and you can't because there is no documentation.
And so, as we all now know, that's absolutely true. In reality, there was no vetting really for any of these people. In fact, it's worth taking a minute here to really understand, folks, these third world countries like Afghanistan, for example, don't exactly have robust criminal record systems or fingerprint databases or biometric databases or whatever else. So what that means is that even if Joe Biden and the Democrats had really wanted to vet all of these people, and they very clearly didn't, they couldn't have because it's just literally not possible to do so. In fact, U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. Jeanine Pirro actually spoke about all of this just earlier this morning. But before we take a listen to what she had to say, first, I want to say real fast that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this out.
Let me say one more thing, and it's not about this case. It's about vetting in general. The nonsense that the left gave us with this Operation Welcome Allies. Look, there was no vetting. If you think there was vetting, I have a bridge to sell you. If you saw the chaos that was going on at that airport in Kabul, in Afghanistan, it was typical of what was going on in the Biden administration. And the Pentagon, I believe it was Kirby and people in the Biden administration said the Afghan withdrawal that we all know was disastrous was a success. And that's a quote. They called that a success. That chaos is not a success. That is a nightmare. And 13 American servicemen and women were killed at that airport because the Biden administration couldn't get their facts together and couldn't make a decision regarding the rules of engagement to take down a known suicide bomber. So let's stop namby-pambing around with this, oh, he was vetted. There was no vetted. The welcome mat was thrown down. They even admitted that they short-circuited the vetting. What they did was they brought in 90,000 people into this country that were not vetted. They told us all the other immigrants were vetted. What do? Call the FBI in Afghanistan and say, gee, do you have anything on this guy? Did we call Venezuela and say, gee, how about your criminal justice system? What can you tell me about this guy? It's like the 10, 20 million illegals who've been let into this country. We don't know who they are until we suffer the consequences that we have seen in Washington. And I was on that scene, and it is a very sad place.
And so, folks, at this point, we should just go ahead and address the elephant in the room and have somewhat of an uncomfortable conversation real quick. This entire notion that the United States of America was built by immigrants from all over the world and that we are nothing more than one big cultural melting pot is actually nothing more than a globalist lie and, more importantly, historical revisionism. In truth, up until 1965, 99.9% of all immigration into this country came from one place, Europe. Not Afghanistan, not Somalia, not India, Europe. That is to say, Europeans and their descendants built this country. What's more, this country was actually 90% ethnically European up until 1965. And so now, much to absolutely no one's surprise, now that the third world has come flooding into the United States, we're having some cultural compatibility issues, to say the least. But you know what's actually crazy? Even the mainstream media is just now starting to pick up on this. Take a look.
We do not have any obligation whatsoever to anyone to allow them entry into our country and to all of the benefits that offers. We don't have any obligation to do that. And quite frankly, it's asinine that we can't have a realistic policy conversation about how certain cultures are quite literally incompatible with ours. It should be okay to say that. And more importantly, it should be okay to base our immigration policy on that. So I'm glad that President Trump is taking some steps in that direction because it is a long time coming.
And that is absolutely true. President Trump is now not only cutting off immigration from the third world, but also he's working to deport pretty much every single immigrant from the third world as well. And you know what? Thank God for that, because take a look at this other recent little bombshell from General Flynn. As he just posted on X, 1.4 million Americans killed in action, KIA, on the streets of America since 2000 by narco-terror groups over the past 25 years is roughly 56,000 Americans KIA every single year. In approximately 20 years of Americans being in Vietnam, we lost 50,000 KIA. Let's not get into the other resources wasted over there in Vietnam or other far-flung places that simply aren't priorities for the American people, and all of this occurring while certain people here lined their pockets. Enough is enough. Our priorities are so screwed up, and America, under President Trump's leadership, needs to completely reset our national priorities and focus. And so, folks, just to be crystal clear about all of this, what's that national priority that he's talking about? Deporting all of the third world immigrants that are currently inside of the country. That's what. Because as he just said, we've lost 1.4 million Americans in the last 25 years to Latin American narco trafficking. 1.4 million Americans. At this point, the problem has gotten so bad that pretty much every single person in this country personally knows someone who's been affected by this. Which is why, right this very moment, 11 months into President Trump's second term, according to recent polling data, a whopping 54% of Americans nationwide are still in favor of mass deportations. Not selective deportations, not a handful of deportations, no, mass deportations. Which is why it's really so insane that the propagandists over at CNN are still trying to say otherwise. Take a look.
Heard from many folks who were Trump supporters, voted for Trump both times, who's like, well, this is not what I voted for. And what they're referring to specifically are families being torn apart, kids being having their parents picked up and taken away from in front of schools, from having restaurant workers and other folks who are hardworking but undocumented, being disappeared from their community. And I think the rhetoric and the reality are now crashing together of when you talk about illegals and violence versus the people that are in a community that have been working there and building relationships. There is a massive disconnect.
I would like to go back, though, and I'm interested in your two-time Trump voting friends who are apparently phone banking you that are surprised that he is interested in enforcing our immigration laws, because it is literally what he's been running on since he started in 2015. If you voted for Donald Trump two or three times and you're unsure about why he's deporting people, I dispute it.
So
I'm just
Scott,
sorry.
we are on.
And so, folks, of course, as usual, Scott Jennings is absolutely correct. The truth is, President Trump didn't campaign on selective deportations or a small quantity of deportations. No, he campaigned on mass deportations, and that, along with many other reasons, is why all of us voted for him. And so, folks, personally, here's sort of how I view things right now. Really, as things currently stand, there are two types of Americans. Those of us that are actively working to preserve and revitalize the demographic integrity of the United States of America, and then there are those individuals like Lindsey Graham and the propagandists over at CNN that are actively pushing for more immigrants from the third world. And I'll tell you what, folks, here's the honest truth. Really, this isn't a battle that we can afford to lose, because if we do, down goes the republic. We need to put America first.